hello there folks, my name is Amy Wilkes. I am a professional magpie, aka costume designer and owner of Crystalist Costume Design. Thank you for stopping by my channel. This is my first video of many on this new channel. Give a bit of a story time on a recent commission that I was asked to do for the beautiful and oh so sassy Anita Stupp. She's a drag queen who has placed several orders with me now, smaller orders, and as she'd really enjoyed and appreciated the workmanship that went into the items that she'd tried and tested, she was ready to place an order for a whole outfit, which was incredibly exciting. She wanted something to wear to the recent event at Birmingham Eden Club, and she'd mentioned that she wanted something along the lines of the Grinch. We'd had a few messages backwards and forwards on Instagram, and we decided that we needed to meet up in person to discuss the finer details. So on the 19th of November I got a train to London and we met for a liquid lunch to discuss the costume. There I was able to take all of Anita's measurements, absolutely every measurement that I could ever need, which meant or means now that I can make her absolutely anything based on these measurements, or at least that's the idea. So we weren't able to spend too much time together, unfortunately, because of the delays on the trains, but it was enough time to be able to have quite a good discussion about what it was that she wanted. While we were there, she presented me with a sketch which she'd put together to show her vision for the costume, and I was told that the main pieces that she was wanting was a pair of pasties, one pasty to be the sleigh, one pasty to be Max the dog with the little antler tied to his head. She wanted a hooded capelet in green fun fur, and she'd actually already purchased the fun fur, so she gave that to me when we actually met. She wanted the capelet to have the jagged edges on the hemline, and she wanted it to be lined. And she wanted a matching choker with the jagged edge all the way around as well in the same fabrics. Also, she'd purchased already a green tutu, a waist cincher, like an underbust corset, and a pair of gloves, which she also brought with her to the meeting that she could give to me. And with those, what she wanted was the corset to be rhinestoned. She wanted fun fur attaching to the top of the gloves and have them also rhinestoned, and she wanted rhinestones on the tutu as well. So armed with two big bags full of goodies, I was able to leave that meeting that day with all of her measurements, a really good idea of what it was that she wanted, and a deadline. So bear in mind that we met on the 19th of November. Her event that she wanted this full outfit for was on the 7th of December. So I closed commissions immediately, and I was able to go home, put together some prices. I had made myself a rhinestone calculation spreadsheet so that I was able to work out how many rhinestones the project would need, and therefore how much the rhinestones were going to cost me, how much glue I was going to need, and how much time I was going to need to charge for the application of the rhinestones. I'd already measured my rhinestone application speed. I knew that I could apply about 1,400 to 1,500 rhinestones per hour. So it was fairly easy to, well, I say easy, it took me several hours to put the spreadsheet together, but I was able to put together a full invoice with my expected sewing time, pattern making time, cutting time, etc. I was able to price up closures that we needed for the capelet and for choker / collar. I was able to itemize it very, very clearly so that we both knew where we stood, and so that I was able to get paid for my time. I was able to cover the expenses for the materials, and everything was good to go. So I did that the following day after I got back from London, sent that off. Everything was okay. I waited for deposit, and then I was able to place all of the orders for everything that was needed for the project. And because I have Amazon Prime, I was able to receive all of the things that I needed within probably 3 working days. So still a little bit pushed for time really, but we got started. So first thing I started to do was to cut out the fun fur. Now, I had never worked with fun fur before. Mainly I've worked with spandex, I've worked with some chiffon and cotton, things like that, but never anything like fun fur. So this was a brand new experience for me, and boy oh boy was it a learning curve. Now I don't know if you know anything about fun fur, but first things first, the stuff goes everywhere. I'm still finding pieces of green fluff in corners of my house, and I have swept and cleaned several times since sending off that costume, so it makes a mess. Little did I know that there was a specific way to actually cut the fabric that results in minimal fallout. So without that information, I just went ahead and started hacking out my pattern pieces, and of course fluff went everywhere. It lined my lungs for several days. So I will warn you about that if you're going to work with fun fur. Do some research, which I did. There was some great YouTube videos about sewing with fun fur that actually helped a lot. What I will say is I actually initially used a pattern for the capelet, like a base pattern from a channel which I can't remember off the top of my head, but I will put it on the screen now. She had a really amazing hooded capelet pattern which she offers for free, which was just incredible. Thank you for that. And I adapted it to suit the dimensions that Anita was after for the capelet. I added extra seam allowance and cut in the jagged hem, and I was able to add some height to the hood because Anita had specifically explained that she wanted a big wig under there, so she wanted plenty of room. So I was able to customize that pattern to fit Anita's brief. So after I'd figured out the best way to cut the fun fur and get all the patterns cut out, I started work on it. Now, it was a bit of a stop-start situation, and as I said, it was quite a learning curve. I was finding that the fun fur has a bit of stretch to it, and so when I was trying to sew the lining, which has no stretch to it at all, to the jagged edges specifically, it was moving around too much. So there was plenty of stitching, unpicking, restitching, re-unpicking, recutting at some point as well. And I will say I was starting to pull my hair out a little bit. There were tears on one day, I'm not ashamed to admit. You know, not everything goes perfectly all the time. In fact, very few times does it go exactly as you expect it to go. So I worked around it, and I actually ordered some stay tape to sew to the edges of the fun fur so that when I stitch it to the lining it doesn't move around, so that was great. The capelet also, I bought a frog closure and a hook and eye which I hand sewed to the front of the capelet, and then I rhinestoned the frog closure for extra dazzle because, you know. The corset actually ended up having around 6,000 rhinestones on, which I individually placed and glued by hand, and oh, I was so pleased with how that came out. It was just gorgeous. The tutu was made up of 21 individual sort of tripled over panels of tulle, and each one of those 21 sections had at least 20 rhinestones on, so I individually glued those on as well. The gloves, I was able to sew some fun fur around the tops of them and then obviously rhinestone the rest of those gloves. And the way that I did the rhinestones, they were more dense towards the top, same with the corset, and then as you come down there's fewer rhinestones with larger spaces between them, and I think that has such a lovely effect. As for the collar, I drafted my own pattern for that completely from scratch based on Anita's measurements, and I was so happy that all of the learning curve that I'd learned by doing the capelet I was able to apply to the collar, and it actually came out right first time, so I was super pleased with that. Anita also, after we'd met up and I'd started work on everything, she realised that she was going to get very hot under all of that fur and decided to purchase a hand fan, which she sent directly to my home address, and I was to just rhinestone the front and back staves so that it didn't get in the way of opening and closing the fan, which I did as well. The next thing was the pasties, and I actually messaged Anita on Instagram and asked her if she had a reference photo so that I knew exactly what sort of thing she had in mind. So I knew it was the sleigh and Max the dog, but I wasn't sure exactly on the dimensions or anything, so I asked her if she could send me a reference picture. She sent me two. One was of the Grinch with an empty sleigh, and one was with the Grinch with a massive bulging sleigh full of toys and Christmas trees and everything. And at that point I thought that it was fairly amusing, and I'll put the screenshot of the conversation here, but the idea of a massive sleigh and a tiny dog really made me chuckle, and I said perhaps I'll just go with the smaller sleigh and the, you know, so that it's a bit more coherent. And Anita actually said, actually go for the laughs, which I just love. That's one of the things that I really love about Anita. She's very funny, and I think we get on very well because we've got a very similar sense of humour. So I was like, okay, say no more. And well, you can see the final design in the end and see how we went for a massive sleigh and a tiny dog, which I thought was just brilliant. Pasties, as all my pasty designs, was completely custom made. I hand drew it, I hand cut it, painted all of the details in with acrylic paints, and then on top of that, once that was dry, I was able to hand glitter the whole design as well with the corresponding colours. I was able to then seal the whole thing, and then I finished everything off with lots of corresponding colour rhinestones. Initially, Anita wanted the sleigh and the dog to be connected by chain link, but because of the design, I felt as though a chain would actually weigh it down and maybe warp it. We were actually going for pasties that were completely flat. Anita has worn a breastplate before, so we've had coned pasties which stick on to a breastplate really nicely, but for flat chest it sticks better if there's more surface area touching the skin, so we went for a flat design. So if chain was attached to that from the Grinch's hand to the reindeer, I felt as though it would sort of compromise the structure of the pasties. So I contacted Anita and said, I've got these different options here. I had like decorative, you know, trim, roping and things like that, and she chose one that she really liked, so I used that instead, and then embellished it with rhinestones because, again, we love a rhinestone. So I managed to complete the whole outfit in time, thankfully. I knew I would anyway, but it just makes you feel a little bit nervous, doesn't it, when you've got quite a close deadline. But everything went really, really well. I had a final video chat with Anita the day that I sent the parcel, just to make sure that she was happy with everything. I was able to show her things in detail, and if she needed any changes making, then I could do that before I shipped them. Everything was fine and okay. She was extremely excited, and so was I. So once I'd finished that, I got to work packaging the whole outfit really nicely and safely and posted it. Needless to say, she was thrilled and I was just so happy. I can't tell you how wonderful it feels to put yourself into a project that's sort of been a roller coaster. You've had your ups, you've had your downs, it's been emotional. But you did it, you got through it, and then you've passed it on to the person who's bought it from you, and they are over the moon with it. Like, there's no feeling like it. It's amazing. And so I was just enjoying all of her Instagram posts that day.
Oh my God, this is like, I hate Christmas, but this is this makes it fabulous. So, got a ton of Homegirls business cards too. Really good quality cardstock. So you know what that means. That's right. Wedge that eye. Carve that cheek. Ooh.
So she received everything about 2 days before the event, I want to say. And on the actual day of the event, she took some footage of herself getting ready, and she did a live video on Instagram, which I was able to join in with and see her in all of her finery, her Grinchiness, and that was just wonderful. So without further ado, I would like to show you a little video that I put together of the whole outfit before I sent it off to Anita, and I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a bit of a ramble, bit of a story time. I hope you don't mind the amount of detail I went into. Let me know if this is the sort of thing that you would like to see more of on my channel. This kind of story time. Are you more interested in the DIY aspect of things? Are you more interested in the behind the scenes, you know, how I work, how I do my commissions, how I, you know, anything really? Feel free to ask, but there will certainly be some tutorials on how I make pasties, for example, as well as lots of other things coming up. So thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the final piece, and I will see you again soon. Shimmies and kisses.